The highway stretched endlessly, lit only by faintly glowing streetlights that flickered as Veronica Caldwell drove through the night. Her sleek black sedan moved precisely at 65 miles per hour, her eyes calm but alert. As the newly appointed FBI director, long hours had become routine. Tonight was no different, except for one unexpected thing. Red and blue lights suddenly exploded behind her, bathing the car's interior in pulses of color. Veronica's grip tightened slightly on the steering wheel. Her eyes flicked to her speedometer again. Exactly 65, no violation. She signaled calmly, steering onto the shoulder. Years of working alongside law enforcement gave her confidence. This was likely routine. Yet something felt off. Behind her, the patrol car lingered. Finally, the door swung open. Officer Daniel Kearns stepped out. Tall and imposing, his posture radiated hostility. As he approached, his left hand hovered near his firearm. Veronica lowered her window carefully, hands visible. "Evening, officer," she said calmly. "License and registration," Kearns demanded, no greeting, his eyes cold. "May I ask why I'm being pulled over?" "License and registration," he repeated, tone harsher. Veronica felt unease creep up her spine. Slowly, deliberately, she retrieved her wallet, offering her FBI badge alongside her license. Kearns glanced at the badge, unimpressed. "FBI, huh?" "Yes, officer." He paused, eyes narrowing dangerously. "Step out of the vehicle." Veronica blinked. "Excuse me?" "I said step out," Kearns repeated, his voice sharp. His hand now rested closer to his firearm. Veronica felt the shift immediately. This wasn't routine. It was dangerous. Carefully, she spoke again. "Officer, I'm the FBI director." Kearns slammed his palm violently against the roof, interrupting her, his eyes blazing with challenge. "I said get out, now!" Adrenaline surged through her veins. This wasn't about breaking a traffic law. This was about power and humiliation. She glanced toward the road, empty and dark. She was alone with this armed, hostile officer. But Veronica had trained for this. She wouldn't go down easily. She was ready. Yet just as she steeled herself, another police cruiser rolled up, headlights slicing through the dark, escalating the threat instantly. The second cruiser skidded to a stop behind Kearns' vehicle, its red and blue lights adding to the chaos of the moment. Veronica felt her stomach tighten. Backup wasn't always good news, especially if they were backing the wrong side. Another officer emerged, taller, broader, no visible nameplate reflecting in the harsh glare of the headlights. He approached with a slow, deliberate stride, his hand resting casually on his belt. Kearns didn't even glance back at him. That told Veronica everything she needed to know. "Problem here?" the second officer asked. Kearns smirked, rolling his shoulders. "Just dealing with a non-compliant driver." Non-compliant. That word hung in the air like a noose. Veronica knew exactly what came next. She had read too many reports where that phrase became a death sentence. The new officer took another step closer. "Ma'am, step out of the vehicle." Veronica inhaled slowly. The options ran through her head. Refuse? They escalate. Comply? She's at their mercy. Run? Not an option. The new officer tapped the roof of her car, impatient. "Didn't you hear me?" She had to be smart, stay controlled, don't give them an excuse. Veronica exhaled, her voice sharp but measured. "Before I do, I need you to state probable cause." Kearns' jaw tightened. The second officer smirked. "Suspicious behavior." "What behavior?" she shot back. Kearns laughed under his breath. "You think flashing a badge gets you special treatment?" Veronica didn't blink. "Number? I think it means I understand the law better than you do." Kearns' face darkened. He had expected fear. Instead, he got defiance. Then, without warning, he reached for her wrist. Veronica twisted instinctively, yanking back before his grip could tighten. "Get your hands off me!" Her voice cut through the night like a blade. Kearns didn't let go. "I think she's resisting," he said with a slow, mocking grin. The second officer's hand moved toward his radio. He was about to say it, the phrase that justified everything. "We have a non-compliant suspect." Veronica barely had a second to react before Kearns did something she hadn't expected. He drew his gun, the cold barrel of the weapon leveled just inches from her face. Time stretched thin. Silence crushed the air. This was it. She had seen cartel leaders hesitate less. Veronica's breath stayed steady, but she knew. One wrong word, one wrong move, and she wouldn't be the one writing the report in the morning. Then, a voice sliced through the air. "Hey, I'm recording this!" The voice came from the shoulder of the road, firm and steady. Veronica didn't dare move her head, but she caught the reflection of a phone screen in her peripheral vision. A man standing just beyond the police cruisers, recording everything. "Put the weapon down," Veronica ordered, her voice cutting through the night. Kearns didn't move, his fingers flexed around the grip of his gun, his mind scrambling for control. He wasn't afraid of her. He was afraid of what that camera meant. The second officer hesitated. His eyes flicked between Kearns and the witness, the weight of the moment finally hitting him. The game had changed. The radio on his shoulder crackled. Unit 47, status. Kearns still wasn't looking at her anymore. He was looking past her, toward the growing glow of approaching headlights. More sirens, more backup, but not the kind he wanted. Think, Kearns. Veronica saw it in his eyes, the gears turning, the panic, the desperation. Desperate men made reckless choices. He exhaled sharply, finally lowering the gun, just slightly. But he wasn't giving up. "Get him to stop recording," Kearns muttered to the second officer. Veronica's stomach twisted. She knew what that meant. The second officer turned, stepping toward the witness. His hand moved toward something. His own weapon? His radio? His taser? It didn't matter. It was about to go from bad to worse. Number? Not this time. Veronica took a step forward. "Touch him, and I will personally have you charged with obstruction of justice." Her voice was sharp, unwavering. The second officer froze. For the first time, doubt flickered in his expression. Then, the sirens arrived. 3 squad cars screeched to a halt. The moment their doors flew open, the entire energy of the situation shifted. Uniformed officers stepped out, hands hovering near their holsters, eyes scanning the scene. They didn't know what they were walking into until one of them recognized her. A lieutenant, his brow furrowed. Then realization hit him. "Director Caldwell?" Silence. Veronica didn't react, didn't move. She wanted them to process what had just happened. The second officer took a slow step back. Kearns? His face barely changed, but his grip on his gun finally loosened, his fingers uncurled. Still, his arrogance wasn't gone. "This is a misunderstanding," Kearns muttered. The lieutenant didn't look at him. He was still focused on Veronica, her stance, her expression, the tension in the air. "Director Caldwell," he started, voice careful. "Do you want to press charges personally, or—" She didn't hesitate. "I want them detained." The air shifted. It was as if the weight Veronica had carried for the past few minutes finally transferred. To Kearns, to his partner, and to every officer who'd just arrived on the scene. The lieutenant's voice was tense but respectful. "Director Caldwell, do you wish to file a personal complaint?" Veronica looked him squarely in the eye, her voice unwavering. "Lieutenant, this isn't about me. It's about every innocent person who's faced this and didn't have a badge to protect them. It's about a system that allows this to happen." The lieutenant paused, recognizing the gravity of her words. Then he nodded, calling over 2 officers. "Take Officer Kearns and his partner into custody pending an internal affairs investigation." Kearns' eyes widened. "You can't be serious." The lieutenant's gaze hardened. "Dead serious. You drew a firearm on an unarmed citizen, on an FBI director. It stops here." Kearns stood motionless as the cuffs clicked around his wrists, disbelief turning to fury. "You're making a huge mistake," he spat, his voice shaking now. "No," Veronica said firmly. "The mistake was yours, thinking you could abuse your power without consequence." She turned away from him, facing the witness who still stood on the roadside, phone recording steadily. "Thank you," she said sincerely. "Without you, this story might have ended very differently." He nodded, eyes somber. "It happens too often, I just couldn't let it go unseen." A flood of blue and red lights filled the night as more vehicles arrived. Internal affairs, state officials, even media vans rolling onto the scene. Officers moved swiftly, securing the area, collecting statements, and gathering evidence. Within minutes, the stretch of highway transformed from an isolated danger zone into a spotlight illuminating injustice. Word spread quickly. By morning, the footage had been viewed over 1 million times. News outlets blasted headlines. Cop pulls gun on FBI director during routine traffic stop. Officer arrested after threatening FBI chief. Systemic bias exposed. How safe are we? At FBI headquarters, Veronica didn't rest. She called a press conference, her voice calm yet firm as she stood before cameras and microphones. This isn't just about me. It's about countless others who've faced injustice in silence. We will not tolerate abuse of power from those entrusted to protect our communities. Reporters shouted questions, cameras flashed, but she maintained composure. Her message was clear. This isn't just accountability for 2 officers. It's accountability for a system. Behind closed doors, the reaction was swift and decisive. Officer Kearns faced charges, assault with a deadly weapon and official misconduct. He lost his badge, his pension, and any respect he once held. His partner, suspended indefinitely, faced his own investigation. Internal Affairs launched a full-scale probe into the precinct's practices, uncovering other similar complaints that had previously been ignored. The mayor issued a public apology, promising reform. Police departments nationwide reviewed training protocols. Mandatory bias and de-escalation training became law. A special commission formed, tasked with oversight of law enforcement interactions, especially involving minorities. The ripple effect was enormous. Emails flooded Veronica's office, thanking her for standing up. Messages came from ordinary citizens, community leaders, and other law enforcement officers ashamed of the actions they had witnessed, promising change. But the most impactful was a handwritten note from a mother in Chicago. It read simply, "My son experienced this same treatment, but no one was there to record it. Today you spoke up for all of us. Thank you." Veronica placed the note on her desk as a reminder of why she served, why she fought, and why every battle mattered. Weeks later, standing before a crowded press room, Veronica addressed the nation directly. "This isn't just about me. It's about every person who's ever been treated unjustly. It's about every officer who serves honorably, yet suffers from the tarnish of a corrupt few. Change isn't easy, but it is necessary. Together, we can ensure justice isn't a privilege for a few. It's a right for all." Applause filled the room, and Veronica knew her fight was far from over. But today, she stood victorious, proof that truth, when courageously defended, could never be silenced. Speak up, stand together, let justice echo.